What's going on, everyone? Today we're going to be going over the best settings you need to be utilizing in Battlefield 6, and there are a lot of things to look at in this game, which is awesome, but it can also be a pretty big headache, and I am here to help you out. We're going to cover gameplay settings, both controller and mouse and key settings, as I have been playing on both inputs, as well as tweaks to your audio and a lot more. As always, timestamps are down below, but I would encourage you to watch the entire video, as there's a lot of overlap between sections and a lot to be learned, and I don't want you to miss anything. Let's get right to it. I'm going to very quickly go over the accessibility tab. All these settings are also in future tabs. I kind of think of this accessibility tab as like a quick access, and also a huge thing for you to be aware of. If you see a small white square next to any setting, this means I have adjusted the setting. If there is no small white square, then it is a default value. This is pretty big, as you can see what you have changed from what the game did come with. So starting at the top, audio, menu, narration, subtitles, both of these I have as off. The rest of this here is going to be up to you in what you need. If you need to change subtitle settings because you have them as on, you're going to have to go in here and do what you want to do. I don't really like subtitles in my game personally, because I want to have my screen be as clear from clutter and stuff from popping up on it if I can. Graphic quality settings, color profiles, world brightness, and camera effects, these are all pretty big. For world brightness, I will just state that I do like my monitor to be a little bit more bright, so I have this as 60. As for color profiles, if you go in here, you can change the color for like pretty much everything in the game. The few big ones that I have adjusted are friendly color, squad color, and enemy color. I basically just upped the saturation in here, so if you go in here, you can go all the way over to the right, which is full color, and then you can change the color to what you want, and I would recommend that you do this. Camera effects is also probably one of the biggest settings in the entire game. All of these, for the most part, I have as off. Basically, I don't want any world motion blur. I don't want any weapon motion blur when I'm moving around. I don't want a blur effect. I want things to be clear. Infantry HUD motion, you want this as off. You don't want your HUD to be moving around as you are moving around or taking damage. Camera shake, you want this to be as low as possible, so all the way down to 50. Reduce sprint camera bobbing, you want this as on, because this is going to reduce the amount your camera does shake around or bob around. And then chromatic aberration and infantry crosshair projection, you want both of these as off, specifically the infantry crosshair projection. This is just going to stop the crosshair from moving around, and it's going to keep it centered on your screen, which is something that should be pretty obvious. You want this as off. As for controls with the hold and toggle, there's a lot you can adjust here, whether you want to be able to hold the button down or just toggle that button to do it. For me in particular, I have crouch slide as crouch toggle, because on my controller, I do have crouch set to toggle, not hold. So I can just kind of hit that crouch button once, and I am going to be able to crouch. I don't have to hold that crouch button down. Now I want to be able to slide on controller, which is why it is set to crouch toggle. Otherwise, I have all these other ones set as default. As for a controller, we got controller vibration, which I have always had my controller vibration set to off all the way back since like 2003, 2004, Halo 2, when that first came out. I always had controller vibration off because I don't want my hands shaking when I am taking damage or when I am shooting my guns. I want my hands to be kind of steady. I do find that if I do have vibration on, it could make me miss some shots. I will say, if you feel like you really need to have vibration on, you can go in the vibration mix and turn certain things on and off, which is actually, I think, awesome. If anything, I would probably turn weapon fire off and destructions and explosions off, but maybe if you want some incoming damage feedback, turn this as on so you can know when you are getting hit, your controller will vibrate a little bit. And then you can also, of course, go one step farther and have the vibration intensity a little bit higher or a little bit lower if you do want just a little bit of feedback. Chat, I do have both of these set to off. Tutorials, this is more for the campaign. I just have them as off. You don't really need it. And then hints, I have all this as default. As you get more experience with the game, you could turn some of these hints off, and I think that would be a valid take. But for now, I'm just leaving them on because the game is brand new. I don't want to miss anything. All right, moving on to the gameplay tab. We do have a lot here, and this is where we're going to start getting into sensitivities and stuff. But first, we got invert all vertical look. That's going to be custom. And vertical look settings is basically just whether you want certain things to be inverted or not. Now, I do have this as all the defaults. I don't really want my look controls to be inverted at all. I just don't think it's necessary. Hold toggle. This is what we went over on the accessibility tab, and this is what I was saying. There's a lot of overlap. Crouch slide, again, just crouch toggle. The rest are default. Capture area outline, I do have this as on. And if you're wondering what this is basically the white outline or red outline or blue outline that is around on the ground. It just gives you a more definitive way to tell if you are in the capture area and where that capture area is. Infantry, this is where we're going to start getting into a lot of aim sensitivities and aiming and that type of thing. Infantry aim sensitivity, this in particular is going to be just for the controllers out there. If you read the description, adjust infantry control input sensitivity when aiming with a controller. So I do have this as a little bit higher than the default. I believe the default is 40. I have this at 50. Then infantry mouse aim sensitivity, since I do play both inputs, I have this at 16, which is probably a little bit lower for some people, but I like a much slower sense on my mouse. I'd rather just move my mouse more to turn around and that type of thing. I don't want to miss shots if someone's too close. I'm just kind of spazzing out, looking all around. I do play it on 1600 DPI, so that's something for you to be aware of. If you do play around 1200 DPI, I'd probably set this around 20 to 25. And if you're an 800 DPI user, you probably would want to double this, which would be around 30, 32. Double tap forward to sprint. I just have this as off. I don't really want to double tap forward just to sprint. I just don't think it's necessary. Then we got crouch toggle sprint as stand, and then a bunch of stuff I do have just as the default. I got on for vault over sprint, sprint door barge as on. This is basically just breaking into doors. If you're sprinting, you'll bust into the door, and then vault over. That's pretty self-explanatory. You're just gonna vault over an object if you're sprinting. Double tap crouch for sprint slide. I could see a world where maybe you could turn this as off. So a single tap of crouch is going to let you slide, but this could have some issues where if you're on controller and you have this as off, you're not going to be able to like crouch on the ground. You're just going to slide every time. So I do have this as on, which is the default. Parachute auto deploy. I have skydive and insertions. Roll camera and landing roll. I think this is a pretty big one that you should turn off, in my opinion. It's pretty cool when you are jumping down to the ground. Your character does like a little body roll, but if you do have this as off, your screen isn't going to kind of shake all over the place. You're going to be able to see what is going on straight ahead of you, which I think is going to give you a competitive advantage. So I would turn this as off. Then the rest of the infantry tab here is going to just be default. Mount type, I have side and up. You could change this to side only if you only want side mounting, or up only if you only want to mount on top of things, or you could disable it if you don't want to mount at all, but I think you should just have this as default. Mount breakout, I have as instant, so I can quickly get away from my mounting. Mount presets, I have as combo. Peek type, I have as side and up, which is basically just kind of peeking around walls. If you ever see those three little lines as the hint, it'll let you kind of peek your gun around the wall when you do aim down sights. Interact and reload, I have prioritize interact, which is again is just the default. And invert demolition charge, I have as off as well. Basically, you're just going to invert the button input for throwing and detonating demolition charge, which I don't think you need to invert it. Vehicles is a pretty big one. So for me, I will just state that depending on the vehicle I'm controlling, I might control it with my controller, or I will control it with mouse and keyboard. If it's just a car that I'm going to an objective, I'll probably just use mouse and keyboard. But if I'm using something like a tank, a helicopter, or a jet, I'm actually going to be using my controller most of the time. I find that just driving those vehicles with a controller, I think it's just a little bit more natural. It's why all the racing games out there pretty much always recommend that you use controller, because it just feels a little bit better. Vehicle aim sense and vehicle mouse aim, I both have these as 12, which is pretty low, and aircraft control sense as 70, and helicopter control sensitivity I have as 70. Basically, I'm just lowering everything here. 100 for me on these, or whatever the default was way too high. Turned it way down. And then all these are as default: helicopter control assist, vehicle aim relative controls, decouple tank turret aiming from turning, also as off, and vehicle boost I have as toggle, so I can just tap that vehicle boost and I'll go forward. I don't need to hold it down. Now for aim assist, there is a lot here that I did adjust. First off, I will state that the infantry aim input curve, the infantry zoom aim input curve, the vehicle aim input curve, and the vehicle zoom aim input curve, I all have set to the Battlefield 1, Battlefield 4 settings. I tried all of them. This for me felt the most natural. It does remove a little bit of the customization that you can't do, but honestly, I don't think it matters that much. Aim assist in Battlefield 6 honestly is pretty good, if not a little bit strong. I had to reduce it, but I do recommend Battlefield 1, Battlefield 4. You can of course try these for yourselves. And if you did play a different game a lot more than some games, like maybe played more Battlefield 5, maybe played more Battlefield 3, Bad Company 2, there's a lot in here, then you could go in and use that setting so it's more familiar to you. Vehicle aim assist zoom snap, I turned down a little bit. This is 40. Infantry aim assist, I have all the way up. I want my max aim assist. And infantry aim assist slowdown, I have also as a little bit lower than default. I just found that the zoom snap, if it was at 100, and the aim assist slowdown, if that was at 100, I couldn't track enemies. The snapping in combination with the slowdown was preventing me from getting my cursor on my target sometimes. Kind of weird to explain. This was especially true if there's more than one person grouped up together. I could just not get my reticle on my target as consistent as I wanted. So I did lower these, and I would recommend that you lower them as well. As for the vehicle aim assist, I had this all the way up, and the vehicle aim assist slowdown, I also turned down to match my infantry aim assist slowdown as well. There's gonna be a lot more controller stuff and mouse and key stuff to go over in a minute, so we will get to that in a second. But as for the campaign tab, if we continue to go down, this doesn't really matter. Basically, again, menu tutorials I have as off, and subtitles I have as off as well. This is up to you and what you want to do. For the controller, I do have a lot of things here that did kind of tweak. Some of them we just went over, but controller settings, I do have, again, very similar to the stuff that we were seeing on the gameplay tab. But if you do notice, infantry aim assist sensitivity 50, which is a little bit higher than the default 40. My field of view is 104. Personally, as long as it's over 100 in my eyes, maybe even 95, I think you're going to be good to go. The higher your field of view is, the more you're going to be able to see around you, but the harder it is going to be to aim on target because enemies are going to be smaller. I like somewhere in the middle. 104 is what I do for all my games. I do recommend this. Uniform infantry aiming. This is pretty big. It's going to be on as default, which I do recommend you keep it as. If you want more customization, you could turn it as off. But basically, this is going to make your aim a little bit more consistent regardless of the field of view or the zoom amount that you are using. And your zoom sensitivity coefficient, that's going to be defaulted to 178. If you do not know what this is, zoom sensitivity coefficient 178. Basically, everyone for the most part is using a 16:9 aspect ratio. That's what your monitor is. Now, if you are playing stretch res, that could be like 16:10. But if you take 16 divided by 9, you're going to get 1.78, which, surprise, zoom sensitivity coefficient 178. It's basically just calculating the vertical and horizontal ratio. Now, what the zoom sensitivity coefficient does is that if you raise this all the way up, your different zoom levels will be a little bit closer together, whereas if you lower this all the way down, your different zoom levels will be a little bit more spread apart. Again, I just recommend you leave this as default. Infantry aim assist, I have this as 100 again. We did go over this a second ago. Infantry aim assist slowdown and infantry aim assist zoom snap, I have these as a little bit lower. Again, I just think that if you have these as the default 100, there's just like too much snap on, there's too much slowdown, I just can't aim properly, so I did lower these. Aim input curve, BF1, BF4, and then stick input acceleration presets, I have this as BF4, BF3, and Battlefield Bad Company. Basically, this just has no acceleration if you are going left and right, and I like to have none. Personally, if I'm moving left and right, I don't want the longer I'm turning right or the longer I'm turning left, I don't want it to go faster the more and more I look. This creates inconsistency when I am looking around, and I just don't like it. If I do want to move faster left and right, I will just increase my base sensitivity. Movement, all this pretty much is default, but again, crouch slide, I do have as crouch toggle. Otherwise, I don't really find that you need to change any of these. And then again, sliding for me on controller, I don't have anything bound to this on controller. It's just a double click crouch and I will get a slide, which is this last setting as well. As for zoom, there's a lot here that you can do and customize, and a lot of this is going to be highly dependent on what you want and how fast you want your scopes to move around. For me, I play both mouse and keyboard and controller. Now, we are in the controller section of this video right now. What this does is by lowering this, my controller zoom senses are all a little bit lower. It allows me to have a little bit more control on the controller. As for all the zoom aim sense optics, I basically start at 0.9 for 1.0. So when I am aiming down sights with a 1x, I have 90% of the zoom sense that I would with a regular just looking around. And then from there, I just go lower and lower as I get up to the large optics. Basically, the further I am zooming in, the less I need to look around. And thus, I do have a little bit slower sense, so I can have a little bit more finesse in my aiming. I don't need to really like whip around with the 10x unless I'm trying to quick scope someone at close range, which maybe if you are a run and gun sniper with a long range optic, you could increase these, but that's like the only scenario where I would recommend that. The other tab are all as default for me. Gyro, my controller just doesn't have that, so I just don't really worry about this, but if you don't want gyro in your controller, you could disable this. And then flick look, I have as always in 90 and 100, these are default as well. Now, if we go back, that was all in the controller settings. The button layout for my controller, I have as alternate. And basically the only thing that is doing for me, if I go back and look at the controller, it is just swapping my right stick in the B button. It's going to be swapping my melee and my crouch. So rather than hitting the right stick to melee, it's just going to be hitting B, and I can use that right stick as to crouch, which I think is pretty good. I also use 2 paddles on the back for jump and crouch, so this isn't too big of a deal. I just don't want to accidentally melee by hitting the right stick. Otherwise, controls I have as default, and the rest of the control settings are for the most part are default as well. Infantry passenger control mapping, all of these are as default for me. I just did not find the need to change any of the default controller settings. I think they're all pretty good. There's nothing missing. As for the ground vehicles, this is like your tanks. The control settings I think are pretty big. Vehicle aim sense again is 12. We went over this earlier. Vehicle third person field of view, I have this as all the way up. Tank aim sense I have as 200, which is all the way up as well. I found that when I am pressing left trigger, trying to zoom in with the tank, or if I am on mouse and key as well, I just want to be able to move it around a little bit. And I found that the default, like 100, I think it was, just moves way too slow. I understand that you might not need to really move around as much when you are looking down the gun with the tank, but I like to be able to move a little bit quicker. It just felt really slow. Gunner aim sense I have as 100, vertical aim ratio I have as 90, and vertical zoom aim ratio I have as 90 as well. I just lowered these a little bit because I don't need to look vertically as much as I am looking left and right and horizontal. Uniform vehicle aiming, I have this as off, and then again, BF1, BF4 for all these aim input. Vehicle aim assist I have as 100 again, which matches the controller infantry settings. Vehicle aim assist slowdown and zoom snap also matches again my controller infantry settings at 60 and 40. Movement I have these as default. And then the zoom I have as default as well. Gyro is disabled because I don't have gyro, which is the default as well. And then flick click is also. As for the rest of the ground vehicle settings, the rest of this here is default, and I just didn't change any of the ground vehicle driver control mapping. I just didn't find it necessary. But the rest of these vehicle settings, the transport vehicle, aircraft, helicopter, gunner, all these are basically the exact same as my ground vehicles. It's just gonna make things a little bit more one-to-one depending on what vehicle you are in. The only thing that I have changed a little bit is under helicopter control settings. I just have the helicopter control sensitivity at 70. I found that the sense was just a little bit too high. I was like overturning my helicopter a little bit too much, so I did lower this down. Otherwise, again, the rest of these are literally the exact same as the ground vehicles, so you can copy this one-to-one, and I would recommend you do this as well. Now, we're almost done with the controller tab, but if you go all the way down to the bottom, joystick, if you're using a joystick, this will be on you. I'm not. We got UI control mapping in here. These are all default. It's just basically what you can do to look around on the map. You could adjust this if you want, but the big one is all the way down here, and I don't know why this is quite as hidden as it is, but controller tuning. This one is going to be massive. Again, we got controller vibration here. We went over this earlier, but we got controller left stick and right stick and the dead zones. This is huge. You're going to want the dead zones and the axial dead zone to be as low as possible while not having any stick drift. So for me, this was setting these to 3, and then the max input threshold. How far can I move that left stick before I hit 100? And for me, it's going to be all the way at 100. I want to have the max range of motion with my left stick. You could move the left stick down to like 80, so you can move a little bit quicker to get to full movement. This is something that maybe you should do. And then the right stick, again, 3 and max input threshold. You're gonna want this at 100 for sure, as your right stick is your aiming on controller. And this will give you the max range of motion when you are looking around. And then triggers for me, I have these all as default. It's the dead zone. If your controller is accidentally shooting, you could lower this a little bit, but for me, I just don't have this issue. But don't miss this. Again, this is controller tuning. It's all the way at the bottom. And before we get to mouse and keyboard, I will just say back on this tab that the controller is on, you can scroll through this to see what the buttons are if you're not really sure what something does. This is honestly pretty cool for like helicopters. You can kind of see like how to get into first person and third person and look around and what the buttons are. So I would recommend you do this if you're just not really sure what controls are, because there are a lot of controls in Battlefield 6 that you are going to need to know. As for mouse and keyboard, we went over a lot of these on the other previous sections in the controller tab. There's a lot of overlap, but we got infantry mouse aim sense 16. Again, I'm at 1600 DPI. If you're lower DPI, you can raise this up. And then if we go into control settings, again, we did a lot of this earlier. Uniform infantry aiming is on. Zoom sense coefficient is 178. Again, this is your 16:9 aspect ratio, 1.78, 178. Infantry mouse aim sensitivity, this is 16. This is the same thing that is on the front page here. And then we got infantry zoom aim sense, which is 65, which is 65% when I am aiming down sights. Vertical mouse aim ratio, we got 100. Invert vertical look infantry, we have this as off. And field of view, again, 104. Most of the movement tab here is set to default. The big one that I did change was slide on mouse and key. I have this as left control, so I don't need a double tap C or double tap control to just slide. I just hit the left control and I am gonna slide. This is way quicker, way more natural in my eyes. I think this is a huge one that you should change. I don't see a lot of people talking about this. And then the crouch slide I have as crouch toggle. Again, this is more for controllers, so I can slide on controller. Double tap crouch for sprint slide, I have this as on. Again, this is really only specific to controller. So if I'm on controller, I can double tap crouch and I am gonna slide. And again, since my crouching is toggle, this is gonna let me slide as well. Roll camera on landing. This again is gonna eliminate that like barrel roll you do and your screen kind of shaking and stuff going over the screen. I think this is good to have as off. Zoom, this is pretty much the exact same as it was on the controller tab, but I'm starting at 90 for 1x and I go all the way down to 70 for the higher zooms. I recommend that you tweak these as you like. Otherwise, the rest of this stuff under other, this is all just default. I just didn't think that you need to change this. We again went over this, a lot of this on the gameplay tab. Moving on, infantry passenger keybinds. This is pretty much all the same. The only thing I did change here was crouch hold, which I did remove, and I put slide as left control. That's the only thing that I swapped. I just don't need two crouch buttons. I'll just use C, which is my toggle crouch. Otherwise, the rest of this is default. Vehicles, again, this is pretty similar to the controller tab. Vehicle mouse aim sense I have as 12, and then control settings. Aircraft control sensitivity I have as 70. Helicopter control sensitivity I have as 70. Most of this, again, is really just the default settings. Vehicle mouse aim sense I have as 8. I found that it was just really moving around fast, so I brought this all the way down. Vehicle third person field of view max. Tank aim sense max. Again, this is more so when I am looking down the sights of a tank. I can just move around a little bit quicker. And then the rest of these keybinds I do just have as default for ground vehicle, transport vehicle, aircraft pilot, helicopter pilot, and gunner keybinds. These are all default. UI keybinds I have all as default. I didn't change anything in there as well. And then the last one here, mouse raw input, I just leave this as on. All right, for the graphics, if you're looking to get a little bit more performance out of your game, I will say that a lot of this is going to depend on your setup. I'm running a 4090 with a 7950X and 32 gigabytes of RAM, so I really don't have any performance issues. I do, however, have my settings a little bit lower because I am recording at the same time as I am playing, which does require me to lower my settings just a little bit. Performance preset is custom, graphics quality, which is custom because I do go in here to graphics quality settings, and you can adjust these as you need for your settings. The big ones always mesh quality, undergrowth quality, volumetric, which is your lighting, sun shadow, shadow filtering, post process. These are all ones that I did lower a little bit. You can lower your textures a little bit as well if you have less VRAM. You can start with this if you want. I get around 150 to 200 FPS, no issues. I think this is good enough for me. Could lower these down a little bit more to give me some more FPS, but I want my game to look pretty good as I am recording and making videos. I don't want my game to look like trash, so I do like to run a fine line between quality and FPS. World brightness, again, we got this up a little bit, and then under the advanced tab for graphics, I do just have the NVIDIA frame generation. I have this as on, just gives me a little bit more frame rate. I haven't noticed any hitching or anything. You might, depending on your settings. And then performance overlay, I have as simple, which is up here in the right-hand corner, just shows me what my FPS is. Camera settings, we went over a lot of this on the other tabs, the accessibility tabs, and even some of the gameplay tabs, but 104 FOV, 83 vehicle FOV, weapon motion blur, world motion blur, camera shake, all as low as possible. I just don't want stuff shaking around. Reduce sprint camera bobbing, you're gonna have this as on because it's just gonna reduce the amount your camera is bobbing around. Chromatic aberration and vignette and film grain, have these all as off. It's just gonna have less stuff on screen. You don't want the corners of your screen to be dark, which is what vignette is, and film grain just gives you like more of a war-timey feel, I guess. I just don't really think this is necessary to have on. Display mode, I have this as borderless. You might want full screen if you want the max FPS. I don't think this is as big of a deal as people make it out to be. It used to be a lot bigger of a deal back in the older days of gaming, but I just don't think this is necessary anymore. I'm also alt-tabbing all the time, starting recording, stopping recording, editing files types, and like writing stuff down, so borderless is just way better for me. Vertical sync, I have this is off as well. Interface and HUD, show HUD obviously on. Infantry HUD motion, we went over this, and vehicle HUD motion, I have both of these as off. I don't want my HUD moving around as I am moving around. Sovis filter, I have this as on as well. This is basically just gonna give enemies a little bit of an outline when you're looking at them. If you turn this as off, it might seem like the game is a little bit more realistic because enemies aren't gonna be highlighted a little bit. I think I'd rather have that competitive advantage and just leave this as on. As for the advanced HUD settings, I think this is a pretty big one that some people are overlooking. Horizontal HUD padding, basically you can just have stuff be a little bit more tight, a little more together. I just don't think that's necessary, so I leave this as 0. And then kill feed, I have all as default. Minimap size, I have as small. I am thinking about raising up to medium or large just because the map is kind of small at times. But the big one is I do kind of tweak the opacity of things. Minimap background, I have as 80, cone opacity 30, cone edge opacity 60. Basically, these are either just making myself on the map be a little bit more apparent or having that minimap background opacity be a little bit less so I can see through the map just a little bit more. View rotation on, interior zoom I have as off. And the big one, I think, view distance on foot, it starts as the default of 160. I think having it at 250 is pretty nice. It's just gonna bump out that minimap. You're just gonna be able to see more on the map, which I think is good. If you wanna have the stuff that is on your map be larger, 160 is fine, but I like seeing more that is like further away in the map, so I do have this at 250. The rest of these settings in here are all default. I just don't think you really need to change anything. Icons and indicators, I leave the icon intensity at the default 60. HUD icons, I do have changed a little bit. Basically, I'm just changing the scale and the opacity of some of this stuff. You'll notice that the objective icon scale and opacity is just down a little bit, so it's just not as overwhelming on my screen. Same with my friendly icons, and same with my squad icons. I just lowered the scale and the opacity so I can see through it a little bit. And I also have ping marker icon scale at 90, just so it is a little smaller. All those are just going to help you with visuals, just help you see a little bit more and not miss any enemy players. Crosshairs and indicators, this is kind of tucked away in here as well. This is basically just your crosshair color. I love having a green crosshair color. It's just something that I have always done. But the crosshair opacity I have at 100, intensity I have at 65, which I think is a little bit lower than the default. As for my crosshair color here, you're gonna see I'm doing red 0, green 255, and blue 10. This is just making it super green. I think this is an awesome color. It works on pretty much everything. I find that the white dot sometimes, like, I just can't see it. You could do red, you could do blue. I've seen some people do pink because that's very like unnatural in game. You're not gonna see pink stuff around a lot, but I do really like green. I've used this in all my games that I have played. Thickness I have as default in Infantry crosshair projection. Again, this is like the crosshair moving around a little bit. You're gonna want this as off. As for hit indicators, there's a lot of cool stuff here. Again, much like the other colors, I bumped up the vibration of the kill color, armor soft hit color, and armor hard hit color. But a big one that is white as default is your headshot color. I put this as yellow. Basically, it's gonna let me know when I get a headshot on an enemy. It's just gonna show up as yellow instead of white text. I think this is pretty cool. I think it's a good thing to have, so you have that feedback. The rest of these down here, hit indicator numbers and damage indicator are all default. And as for the chat settings down here, chat visibility and chat settings, I just have this as hide. That's all you really need to know. Audio is gonna really depend on your setup, but master volume I have as 100. That's basically just max volume in the game. Sound effects volume I have as 100. This is gonna be shots, footsteps, that type of thing. You're gonna want this as 100 as well. Music volume, I do like having the music on, but honestly, the music is very loud as default, so I put this down to 50. Commander voiceover volume, basically this is like the match AI just telling you certain things that are happening. I have this as 60, so it's not as loud. Soldier and campaign voiceover volume, I have this as 60 as well, so other friendly or enemy soldiers are just not like screaming in my ears. UI SFX I have also as a little bit lower, just so it's not as loud when I am like selecting my spawn position. I just don't need it. Basically everything you're gonna want is sound effects volume 100. Everything else should be a little bit lower, so you're not missing any of your sound effects. Sound system, I am rocking headphones because I am using headphones. And then the audio mix, I've tried all of these. Honestly, the default mix is not really that bad. A lot of people like war tapes because it does make everything just a little bit louder. I like high dynamics because it's kind of separating the high volumes and the low volumes. It's just gonna make everything feel a little bit separated. It's gonna make it feel just a little bit more impactful as to what I'm hearing. Obviously, if you just want everything to be louder, war tapes is okay, but I kind of like the high dynamics. And then voice chat, I got voice chat volume down to 50, voice chat talking down to 40. Basically, this is just lowering the volume of my teammates that are talking in game. Push to talk, I have caps lock, input device and external output. And output device is going to depend on your setup. I do have these adjusted for my recording. Accessibility, subtitles, music radios, I have all of these pretty much as default, except I will say music radios, I did lower the volume of all of these just so it's not just as overpowering when I am like having an in-world radio or a driver radio volume, that type of deal. System, all of these again, pretty much default, but you can go in here, system, hit minimap. A lot of this is what we were talking about earlier. Again, view distance on foot up to 250, cone edge 60, cone opacity 30, minimap background opacity 80. I'm actually gonna try the medium map size right now. I do think the small one is pretty small. And that's gonna be it for my master settings guide, guys. Let me know what you think of this video. Do you want more on Battlefield 6? Let me know what you want me to cover. I have a lot of thoughts as to what I could cover with Battlefield, from weapons, tips, tricks, guys, that type of thing. Be sure to hit that like button, and I will see you in the next one. Happy gaming.